Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. You see, I remembered to turn the light on before my live started. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. If you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And I have to admit that I have been in the inside, in the contemplation of delving into some of these topics that I'm finding very curious. Not just in the topic itself, but in the sequencing of the topics. Like it's a prerequisite. Each lesson, each topic of a thought leader or a university lecture that I'm sitting in. And I haven't sat in one of those in, oh my goodness, in almost a month. And I wanted to get more into sitting in on to more of the Google Talks. I have been enjoying those when I come across them. But, it is practicing in trusting that the content that comes across my path is meant for me, is perfect for me. And, as much of that stuff I would just prefer, right? Because it is sometimes heavy. Sometimes these topics, they're not serving anybody in the moment except just drumming up in my own experiences, which it's supposed to do, right? Because the lessons are in the experience that somebody else has had if you're doing it right. So that you don't stumble into those, right? Same mistakes, same situations, same relationships. I am grateful for the relationships that I've had in my life. I've never been a person to want to have lots of people around me, though I quite often found myself, in those situations of, I don't know, maybe it was just in finding that one person that was just a perfect click, but that one person came along with 20 more, and those 20 more each came along with 20. And it just ended up like a big, I don't know, it was like a big party to be honest. I would have to say my 20s were pretty magnificent. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s, I believe I was 27 or 28 years old, when I had a gastric bypass, the stomach stapling. Now they call it, they have the little rubber bands and stuff. That's nothing. I actually had part of my stomach all stapled off and everything because I had gotten myself in a situation where I was 311 pounds. I am curious, number one. But number two, I have to say that for the gifts that I would never think to be thankful for in having, uh, at what the time I thought the worst thing that could ever happen to somebody, right? And it wasn't happening to me. For a lot of it was happening for me, right? I wouldn't be here right now, right? If it wasn't for the experiences, if it wasn't for the choices, if it wasn't for the the serendipities and the little breadcrumbs that we change our minds in, and we find ourselves going off in a different direction. Sometimes it's just in that fear of knowing of how uncomfortable it's going to be, right? Going where we want to go. And then it's just in that, oh God, I just can't do that today, right? And then today ends up, I can't do that this week, this year. And then, 20 years later, that garage that you started the roof is caving in, and you put all that work and effort and planning and that creative excitement that you stirred up when you got the idea. For me, I commit to myself in order to get things done. I know if I don't say, right, see you tomorrow, that I will sometimes let myself off the hook and say, oh, this documentary I'm watching is so amazing, but I haven't done my live show yet. And then, right, override my live show because I'm so into this 3-hour documentary. And believe me, some of these documentaries are long. Some of the lessons, some of these, right, these speeches that I sit in, and it's not always pertinent to me. Sometimes I don't even find the point of it, the lesson in it, and I'll sit through the whole thing and I'll just be a little bit disappointed coming towards the end of something, and then something just ends up opening up, and then I go, oh my goodness, that was what it was all about. And it's in that build up sometimes, and it kind of, right, it irritates me a little bit because it reminds me of English horror movies, right? Their horror movies were just awful, but the build up into moments in a horror movie, right, was absolutely amazing because they just build up the music and going around the corners and stuff, right? Just to kind of go poof, right? But that music would get me every time, right? And I don't know why I brought that up. There's a relation to that, and I know when I come in after my live show that I will pick up there and I'll probably go, oh, that's what I meant to, right? That's where I was going on that. But that's what I do. I go down those side branches on the main branches because, or the main trunks of the trees, because it's so important that if you have that capability of doing that without driving yourself cuckoo or driving somebody else cuckoo or burning yourself out. And I have my life situated in a way that it's not an inconvenience. It's not uncomfortable. Sometimes life kicks you in the butt a little bit. You have to readjust, adapt, and conquer. But then, right, you just keep at it. You just keep moving forward in that fashion that just suits you, right? I'm not somebody who's very easy on myself. I have a lot of energy to burn out, and I know it's important not to waste that on me, right? But I'm obviously not wasting that on me, or my life would look a whole lot different than it does in the moment. But I give myself those comforts. And when I say those comforts, I'm talking those comforts of my mind, my soul, to understand that everything is okay. So when things do go a little bit haywire, I can ride those waves. When I'm a little bit uncertain in my footing, right? That I can feel solid, that it's only feeling uncertain, and until it's actually falling out from underneath me, right? Everything's okay. Doesn't hurt to have that little bit of forward thinking in what we do. It could have been a different story for me. And it still can be, right? Where we'll find out this week sometime if I have a little bit of breathing room in that, to take my time to find the perfect place where I'm supposed to be situated, that I can give back a little bit. I'm in there looking at the possibilities and I'm going, oh my goodness, did I ever have it good while I was there? And in a lot of ways, I did have that comfort in my job. But that's the thing. when you get into that position of comfort, that's your signal that you need to get a little bit uncomfortable. You need to expand a little bit. It's time for change. And sometimes, you're not making that change, and then, right, situations happen and things do get a little bit more uncomfortable, where you do get finally the message that it's time to move on. I trust in myself, and I trust in the lessons that I've brought on board, and in stepping in to believe, into stepping into trusting in something outside of myself, and understanding that everything is going to be okay. I actually have to practice that, don't I? And not be silly in that, but I do have to step my toes in that, and and practice in being comfortable, right? And that's how I get comfortable. That's how I get good at it, right? Let me have a sip of my coffee. My lips are all gluing together. I make a good cup of coffee. I hope everybody's having a great night or a great day wherever you are in the world. I'm sorry to hear about the Pope. I did hear he was a very, very good Pope, and he was a very good man, and he was a little bit forward thinking, and he put some requests in and how he would like to see things played out. You know, during the course of the succession to next pope, and we'll see how much of that is honored or taken into consideration. Again, you know lots of things in this world just catching our attention. They stir this pot over here, right? And then this pot gets stirred, and then just once you think that you've just could take a breather, and that's pretty much all you could do. That breather is just coming to the surface and taking a big gulp, and then just diving right down into that mix again. And I don't mean to laugh at that. I'm laughing because that analogy is so true for the days that we're living in. And that storm might look different for everybody. And like I said, we're all on different floaties and boats and ships, and right, cruise lines, and but it's all the same, the same storm. And yeah, it's really funny just because I find this week that I have been in my anticipation and in that nervousness. I wouldn't call it anxiety. I'm at that point of acceptance and not crying over spilt milk. And I have to say, being honest, because if you're not honest, if you're spreading things out, and you forget things lots of times, right? And not forget in the moment, but you forget the lies you tell. They're still there. And if you're picking up people and folks and ears along the way, and if you're anything like me in that sensitivity, that you notice these things, right? You notice these things. And if I said one thing one moment, and it was just a moment, but I didn't say the truth, I didn't say the right thing. Maybe I meant it in the moment. That would be a totally different thing, because I have to be able to accept and be willing to be reframed in the way I think about things, because I am creating the best human being I possibly can. But in that creation, right, I'm going down a lot of side branches, and creatively, right, I'm probably doing quite a bit my own thing compared to what a lot of people are doing. But I'm sure everybody's doing their own thing too. And, it is only in that little bit of sharing that we do with each other. And it's why I show up. Like I tell you, I have been in it this week. But again, I've been in it because in my outside life, the pot has been stirred a little bit. So I'm riding those waves and I'm feeling nervousness, and it's a different kind of nervousness than I usually have the opportunity to step in. Not to say I've never stepped into this. I've stepped into this nervousness feeling the whole time. Like I said, if you hung out with me for any length of time, it's the dangling heights, right? That, oh my goodness, and you're just holding on. You can't hold on forever. You're gonna let go, and your life is flashing through your eyes, and the possibilities of when you let go, where are you going to drop, and how are you going to drop, and think of all your missed opportunities and all your regrets, knowing you're going to fall, right? Oh my goodness. And that's how I've been feeling this week a little bit in those dangling hikes. Like I said, I feel a little bit nervous. It's nothing that I can't handle. A lot of it is just in the anticipation. And I think I built that resilience up to these kind of issues because I used to, in my self sabotage days. I don't know. This feels like a little bit of self sabotage, right? Like shooting a hole in my foot. But I know I did it with good intent, and I did it as a bit of an experience to see if my lessons were right. If I was this was something, because I was burnt, because I was done, and it was the best opportunity, the best timing. It was just that moment. And if I was going to do anything, it was going to have to be in that moment. And I made that decision, but it still feels like I put a hole in my foot, like I'd shot my own foot, right? But I have to remember that I'm making these decisions because I'm stepping into belief, right? That I am believing in my lessons. I'm believing in the evidence, the conversations, the experiences, and the adventures that come across my path, and that's the truth. And it is a little bit uncomfortable in that way. It is a little bit nervous, but this isn't the whole, right? I'm not this person. And there are lots of people who live this way constant, because I know when I was a video lottery terminal and in my self-sabotaging days, that this is how I felt all the time, right? I felt this way all the time, not knowing, right, how I was going to put the roof over my head, what my next step was, uh, what was I capable of doing or trying, and where were the resources in the support, right? And I know better this time, and there is a little bit of plan there. There is. But again, I'm still dangling, because just because there's a plan there doesn't mean that plan is going to work out the way that I want it to work out, or I hope that it will work out, right? It's going to work out the way it's supposed to work out. Maybe I'm totally off in that. But if there's any way that I can put a little bit of cushion underneath that, and that is, right, in that prep work that we do for ourselves, that little bit of releasing what doesn't work for us, what's heavy. And again, in this experiment of saying, okay, right? Like I wouldn't have been able to do this for much longer. This I want to see is this what the problem was? And nip that in the butt, because every serendipity, every message, every breadcrumb, every miserable moment that it was putting into me, and I'm not that person, right? That was the evidence of, right? You got to do this. You got to do this, right? I did everything I could almost in preparation because, again, I had a different idea in how I wanted to steer all this. And, if that works out, that works out. Nothing happens unless you try. And sometimes you have to take a little bit of risk. But again, in wanting to do it with some credibility, a little bit of is that the word I'm looking for, so that I can feel good about it, that I told the truth. And if I have to backtrack, that I wouldn't be stumbling over myself to remember what kind of little lies I said, right? That I know exactly what I said because I will just play in my mind as I explain it, the whole scenario again, and that will be the truth in that, right? I'm not one for well, I can't say I'm not one for exaggerating, right? No story is any good without a little bit of little sprinkles put into that. I had a friend that I hadn't talked to. Oh my goodness, she came out to visit us a few years ago, and we all went out for breakfast, and it was amazing. But she lives out in British Columbia now, and she messaged me because she was just a little kid. She was just a teenager, a young teenager to boot, my youngest sister's friend, right? But I was telling them a story, and she found the story. I didn't even remember the name of the movie where I picked up this story, and I used to tell this story when we go camping at school and everything, because people, it was thrilling and I was very good at it, right? And she found it online, or she watched it on TV, and she messaged me, and that was just like a month ago. It was called Trilogy of Terror. It was one of the little, it was a trilogies of little horror stories, and it was one of the stories in that. And I had turned it into some kind of, and I did. I've told that story a few times, but it was so nice to hear back from somebody from way way back when. And it's nice to still have these connections, even though these connections aren't in my life uh too often anymore either. Every once in a while, I'm good with that. I'm doing my own thing, right? Okay, let's grab my cards here, you guys. And again, it's that trade-off, right? I am grateful that I don't have those things that quite often tie us down, that make it so that we can't go a little bit deeper, because we don't have that peace and quiet and stability in the moment that we consider ourselves down, especially if you're anything like me, you got that little bit of ADHD, that little bit of problem with distraction. And there are solutions for that. I make movements, and I'm a terrible, right? Procrastinator and things. I'm just really, but I have tricks, right? Because in my distraction, I allow myself to get distracted in my other responsibilities, my other small goals, my hobbies, and some of those other interests of mine. So just enough, right, that it could just sweep me away for a little while until I can get that breather again to say, okay, let's get back to it, right? And then you just jump right back into it again. You're still procrastinating, you're still getting distracted, but what you're doing is you are working on things that you would like to work on, where you had to work on, all right? There's a deadline on this stuff. Dishes still have to be washed. The laundry still has to be done, right? But there are things in our lives too, right? Like for me with my metal detecting and my bottle digging and my outdoor explorers. I still love the abandons. I'm doing castles right now. I really love the old fallen in ancient castles, and I've been really enjoying too looking back at the great rulers of the world, going all the way back. We're talking, right, the Hittites. We're just going right back, right, to yeah, the lost tribes and stuff. It's really interesting. Not even close, like again, like these are interests, but there are people who are absolute experts on this stuff, like my nephew. Oh my goodness, couldn't keep up with them if I tried, right? I like to learn about these things, but I like to learn about them because it's an interest. It's light fluff, right? To distract me in something that I love, right? While I'm getting frustrated in something I'm trying to get done. And sometimes we need that fluff, but I'm so grateful, right, that I have my other interests and my other hobbies, which were a lot more healthier than being a video lottery terminal addict, right? Yeah. That all came from stomach stapling. I don't know how I started there and ended up here, but that's usually how it works, you guys, with me. And you just pick it up where you can pick it up in that, right? And I pick up myself, because I come into my live shows quite often myself, knowing that there's something in there for me, and I know in the moment that there's something for me, and I come in and there always is. So hopefully there's something in there for somebody else. Okay, you guys, we're just gonna pull a card here, just a couple of minutes on this card, and then we're calling it a night. Let's just have another sip of my coffee, wet my lips. All right, going to the next round. I'm happy. It's actually the first time I've actually spoken today. And that's, I said, I haven't even spoken to myself today. I try to have those conversations with myself aloud. But, today I was trying to focus a little bit on the outside well, I don't know if it was just making myself feel good because I like that idea of accomplishment. It makes me feel good, and I really need to feel good. So I was doing little projects, useless projects and stuff, right? Little things around the house that needed to get done, but also in that little bit of hesitancy. It's right in that procrastination of going in and doing what I have to do, even though I don't want to. But again, I commit to myself. And once I commit to myself, it's done. I can't go to bed until it's done. So if I want to go get to bed, right, I'm going to do the very best that I can. And that's the best that I can say in that. And that's the best that I can do in that. And I think that's the best that's even expected, right? Is just the best that we can do in that. Right? Creating the best human being I possibly can. And I look around, and even though it's all hairy, scary, and stuff, and there are those personalities out there, they're set, they're catalysts, they're right, they're meant to be, and you just let them do your thing. And I live my life all around that, and it works out fine, right, in this moment. And sometimes, people are saying, "Oh, she's so naive," right? Well, then again, right? Maybe that's saying what you don't know doesn't hurt you, right? And maybe That's why I'm not all scrambling, why I'm not all messed up, because I'm just not all focusing what's going on out there. I have my own agenda. My own agenda gets me going too. So like I said, it's a same storm, just a different boat. Okay, you guys, let's just pick that card and call it a night. I will take this card right here. Ah, okay. We got this word community in this moment, right? This is my community, my platform, my brand. This is something I'm going to be doing until I'm like, oh, as long as I can yip yap, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be having these conversations and I'm going to be doing that catch up and what I can serve up and what I do. I suspect there'll come a point that, right, a lot of these conversations won't make much too sense to too many people, sometimes probably not even to me. To me, but it always opens up at some point. So many times I go, oh, that's what they were talking about. Oh my goodness, it's so simple. Why didn't I think of that, right? Like some of these, oh, well, like again, these are just lessons for myself and not necessarily important to bring to the table because each one of us gets our own lessons depending on what our goals, our dreams, right? It's that idea of making that effort to make your life, your experience, this experience a little bit better than what it might have been, maybe what it should have been, right? And if you had made a different choice, it could have been a different story altogether. So I am grateful, right, for the experiences that come across my path that, right, kind of caught my attention and, right, caught that curiosity. And I go, that's a little bit off. Why did she say that? Why did he do that? Huh? What was that look for? And then you're off. You're down a side branch. And once you're down those side branches, right? As long as you know where the main trunk of the tree is, because that's home. That's your base. That's the head office, right? And if you're anything like me, and you do, because that curiosity are the questions that we've held all our lives, or the questions we didn't even know that they were a possibility to even take into consideration, right? Because we were so focused in that immediate square that we've always lived in, right? See, that side branch. But that community, my community is my brand at that in this moment. It didn't start off that way. There was a plan, right? It may still work out the way I had planned it to. It's just sometimes things take a different route, right? But sometimes in that reframing how we think, sometimes in having lessons that kind of open up your eyes to things that you got wrong. I'm taking into consideration some of those big lessons, just in some of those 54 powerful words that I hold, these words, right? Because these are important words. But some of those lessons, like those lessons in narcissism and some of these, you know, borderline personality disorders, some of these disorders that I know were prevalent even in my own family and in my own I don't have a lineage, do I? Because I never had children myself. I got nieces and nephews, and I have to think that anything that I can do for myself, right, is something that they won't have to deal with. And if I can't pick up that baton, right, that maybe one of them will along the road, right? Along whatever path or lifetime that they're living. And then for even for myself, right? That I do a little bit by the work that my father did. Even if he was just the example to me, that right, I got to be grateful that I was paying attention, right? Had no idea that I was absorbing lessons at that time, but I must have picked up things along the way. My community is my brand, because in that life that I built for myself, this is the base. This is right. This is home for me. This is where I'm practicing my craft. This is where I'm building those values for myself. This is my trunk of my tree, right? And then everything else are the side branches, those things that I explore. And this is one thing, right? This is mine. Prairie Dodgers is mine. And this will always be home home base for me. So no matter what goes on out there, I know at the very least I can come back to my community, right? That again, when I'm 80 or 90 years old, I will still be showing up here. Okay, let me get these notifications out of the way. Whoopsie. Um, oh my goodness. Oh, jeez. Where did I always, there we go. Always losing my place here. Okay, we brought that out. Okay, you guys, I guess that's it for tonight. Community in this moment. That's not to say that this is the way that it's going to be all the time, right? Because this is important. I wrote here, community offers up a sense of belonging. I belong here, you guys. And you know what? If you hung out with me for any length of time, you belong here too. Okay, you guys, have a great night or a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.